episode 117. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined by Michael Swick.
How's it going, Dave? I see why you would want to just shave your head, because like my hair is just being a pain right now, and I just keep fixing it because
I'm bald. So.
I see the benefits of it because I'm struggling right now, just like trying to fix my hair for the camera.
When I get out of the shower, I just run my hand over my head and I'm dry. So.
Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds great.
I don't have to worry about my hair freezing in the winter anymore, like, or crystallizing, like that used to happen to me all the time. Especially being a swimmer, like leaving like morning practice in Michigan at like 6 a.m. and going outside.
Yeah, probably not the best experience.
So, but yeah, so we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that posts every Thursday on podcast services pretty much everywhere. We are also live streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/digitaldaysgaming, every Tuesday, about 6:30 lately. So 6:30 Eastern time on Twitch, and the show posts 6 a.m. on podcast services on Thursdays. And we are 117 episodes in, which is kind of crazy.
Yep.
Just as you just go through the numbers. So there's a bunch of links in the show notes to stuff if you want to check it out. T-shirts, Teesprings, like the Twitch stuff I just mentioned, the website that takes you to the podcast, subscriptions is all there. Facebook group, Discord, Patreon, everything is there for you guys to just check out. And with that, we're going to get into the news, which I figured this was going to be a follow after the week because the Bungie PlayStation news came out very early in the week, and then more stuff comes out.
Yeah, so we got some more details on that. Thanks to the Sony Q3 reports that came out, or Q4, I forget exactly what quarter they were covering. But we're going to have a lot of financial stuff because everyone did their reporting. But yeah, so PlayStation said to investor owning Bungie is not only owning Destiny and their unannounced new IP, but their expertise, which is something that we briefly talked about last week. It is weird because it seemed like when we were first talking about it, it was still like just a couple hour old story at that point, that it made it seem like Bungie still owned Destiny and they still had, whatever they were working on. But Sony, to their financial department, or their investors, was very much like, we own Destiny, we own Bungie, but they emphasize it's their expertise that is important to them. So I thought that was a key thing to notice or to pay attention to, is how much Sony does actually own Bungie, because it made it sound like it was a partnership last week, and then very much to their investors, it's like, no, this is ours.
Yeah, I think like the example that I used last week is this is very much Macy's and Target. Like they're still owned by one person or one company or one corporation, and ultimately, like the information that slowly came out over time last week is that Bungie's Bungie, but they still gotta Pete Parsons has to report to somebody now, and he didn't have to do that last week. Yeah.
So that is like very key to know it. I didn't put this in here just because it was hard to source because it was just on one of those insider podcasts. But it sounds like Bungie was just shopping themselves around last year, and they were seeking anywhere from $1.5 billion to $2.5 billion, and it sounds like they got exactly what they wanted, with basically a $2 billion offer with a $1.2 billion incentive to stay. So that's a key thing as well, is of the $3.6 billion that was spent by Sony, $1.2 billion is put aside as retention to the staff, because as Sony emphasized multiple times last week, they did this purchase for the expertise. They didn't do any of this for Destiny or the unannounced IP, which is sounding more and more like, was someone in a chat brought it up last week, that like Sony may have bought out I think
they did. I think they bought out the NetEase part. If they are saying that they own Destiny, then they own Matter, which is
because they said the unannounced IP. They own
and
that
the rumor is Matter. The name, or its code name, is Matter. And so I'm more led to believe that they did purchase that $100 million investment out from NetEase, or paid off the 100+ return on investment, or whatever it is. I am very, very. You actually texted this to me last week, and I'm very fascinated about the retention thing. I don't have anything to reference it from. I don't recall hearing about this from Bethesda, but it doesn't mean it wasn't there. And then that could also inflated the price of Bethesda if it is there, not by much, maybe, but I mean, if
this was 1/3 of this deal, so that's
right,
not hard to believe it might have been a chunk of that.
Similar, 25%, I would say, or something. But breaking it down per developer, it's almost $1 million an employee. Now, not every employee is going to get $1 million. Like Pete Parson probably is multiple millions of that, and whether you like him or hate him, Luke Smith is probably multiple $1 million of that.
Yeah.
So,
but the new QA person is probably not getting $1 million.
Yeah, it might be like, hey, if you finish out your contract, you get a $7,000 bonus. I don't know, like
Yeah, well, I this is something we just don't hear too much about, and this is something I brought up last week, is when talking about like people worried about the industry getting smaller, is anytime there's a big acquisition, a bunch of people leave that studio because they get paid out and then start their own studios, and Sony does not want that to happen with Bungie because they bought Bungie for very specific reasons.
And it's what we talked about. They bought the talent.
Yeah.
And like what you've always talked about, they bought the talent and they bought the data.
Yeah.
The player data is what's fascinating, because again, everybody knows I enjoy Destiny. I like playing Destiny. I played it for 7 years. But whether you like Destiny or don't like Destiny, the player retention that Bungie has been able to keep with Destiny is kind of crazy for as long as they've kept it for. And that data is probably borderline priceless, of like when they interact, how they interact, for the most part, for a lot of people, they controlled like Tuesdays. Like Bungie controls Tuesdays because it's like when your game resets. And if they drop some new content, new secret story mission, or a new raid, like it shows up on Michael's timeline. It shows up on they hit the top of the Twitch directory. They hit the top of the Steam charts. Like, so that player retention, player tendency data is probably priceless.
Yeah, and it's not like Destiny, like numbers for Destiny have gone up and down over the course of time, and that data is probably even more valuable, because I would assume Destiny's numbers, though their overall player number has grown, the concurrent player stuff has dropped a little bit, but every time they release content, it spikes. So then PlayStation would be like, well, let's examine this spike. Like, why does it spike? Why does it go down?
Regardless of the content, good content, bad content, it spikes. They've had dry content runs. They've had other stuff runs, and like it's just not to go too deep, but like Destiny 2 currently, as it gets ready for Witch Queen to release in 2 weeks, is getting rid of certain materials that you earned in the game, and materials that you've been earning for like 5 years. They're getting rid of the consumable item that you get when you dismantle a piece of armor or a weapon. It's called weapon parts, and they told people to turn them in, like, because they're going to delete them from your inventory. Now you get crap rewards for turning them in. But I hope that, because they sometimes throw Bungie in their updates throws us a bone with this stuff. Like, I want to see the number of parts that are turned in, because they have that data, and them putting a banner, like this is the stuff that Michael's talking about. Them putting a banner when you load up the game for the first time in a month or a day or 2 days or 3 weeks or whatever, that says, hey, weapon parts are going away on February 22nd. Please turn them in, otherwise we'll remove them from your inventory. Like. And then the players do it.
Well, and there's this other little stuff that is going to sound silly to some people, but Destiny 1 had really good menus. And if that menu guy is still on, that menu person is still on that team.
Even currently, they're like the stuff Outrider. If you opened up a Destiny UI and then you opened up an Outriders UI or an Assassin's Creed UI, it's very similar.
Yeah. And it might be one of those things where Sony just wants to go to the UI person and they're like, how did you think of this? And that is super valuable information. And also Bungie will probably like go to Naughty Dog and be like, how do you do lighting so well? Not that Bungie doesn't have good lighting, but that whole thing is going to change because of this in terms of what PlayStation is going to do. Like
the one of the cool things that Naughty Dog does is like they make a dark environment look dark, but the player doesn't sit there and go, damn it, it's too dark, I can't see.
Yeah, they're really good at getting you to pay attention to specific things, and that's something that even if Bungie's good at that now, they could be even better, because they'll have that work, that hive mind sort of thing now. The funny thing is, why retention is so important is the next part that came out in financial reports. Sony plans to have 10 live service games released by March 2026. I'm assuming 2 of those are going to be from Bungie, which is Destiny continuing, and then Matter releasing. But live service games are very important to Sony. Before anyone panics, they're not going away from single-player stuff, but they need to find a way to, like, financially support their single-player games, and live service games is a good, low-cost way of bringing constant revenue in.
And some of this stuff has already been going, like, before this deal. Like, we don't know exactly what it is, but the stuff that the Haven Studio is talking about of, like, is they're talking about a different style of games as a service. So it's very interesting. That deal they signed with Firewalk and Deviation, like, these are probably going to be games as services. So those are already things coming into hand. Whatever this Naughty Dog invisible multiplayer game is a game as a service.
Which will probably get the least amount of time from Bungie, but at least they can have Bungie look over some stuff and being like, yeah, that's fine, or like maybe don't.
I don't know if that, like, Bungie won't change any of the mechanics, but they might change how the rewards are given or distributed.
No,
or
exactly.
How you redeem something on a season pass. You know, just like you talked about the user interface. So there's a handful of games that are already there and that are already coming. Like, whether you think it is or don't think it is, MLB The Show is a game as a service.
So I'm expecting Sony, and it sounds like Sony is just like, they want to launch 10 new ones by 2026. I think they meant it as new, so we probably can't count Destiny as part of that. But the next one, we can count. But it's important just for Sony just to get some of that revenue, because if they see how some of these live service games print money and take significantly less time and money financially than a Last of Us Part 2 single-player campaign, that's going to interest Sony, and then that's also going to help them alleviate some of those costs, because they can just have these live service games just rolling, bringing money in. And they're going to, it looks like, because they're doing 10, I'm assuming that's not 10 first-person shooters, so we're going to see like a diverse amount of live service games from Sony.
And then the fact of it is that, again, like Naughty Dog can sit there and go, hey, we sold, I don't even know what Insomniac, we sold 9 million copies of Spider-Man. Look at how much revenue we generated from that game. And then, yes, you get a huge spike of it and you carry it for a year or 12 months. But this is roughly the number, but like over the last 6 or 7 years, Bungie has consistently brought in close to $200 million every, every year. And they're bringing out a $40 piece of content and 3 or 4 $10 pieces of content. So they're bringing out what they charge people $80 every year, and they generate $200 million every year. So like, that's super
and not
interesting.
every year is created equal. Too, and they're able to consistently make that money, which definitely interests a company like Sony, who are like, oh, so like, can you have like kind of a shit year but still produce this much money?
And especially like we've always talked about, like, what would happen, and I'm not saying it would or wouldn't happen, but what would happen if God of War Ragnarok is just a swing and a miss? It just doesn't hit. Like, it's not. I don't think it's going to happen with God of War, but there's allegedly Days Gone was a swing, kind of like in Sony's terms, was a swing and a miss. Whether you think it was or wasn't, they didn't give them the permission to do the next one. But Bungie now has a track record of stuff pointing at of Sony going, hey, you know what, we don't think that's a good idea. Like, sorry, dude, we got 6 years of data to show you that you're wrong.
Well, and the thing is, and Sony has some swings and misses. Live service game Destruction All-Stars. And financially, that can be a swing and a miss and not hurt Sony that much. It'll hurt Lucid Games, but it won't hurt Sony's bottom line.
Right.
But if one of their big AAA single-player campaigns that they spend like 5 years developing and hundreds of $millions of dollars, that fails, then you're going to end up in like a EA situation with some of their studios where they're just like kind of lost.
Yeah, like a year or two of Bungie's revenue can pay for Naughty Dog's next game.
Yeah.
It's not apples to oranges like that. It's not like, oh, here you go, but the consistent stream. And then if Destiny can continue, and then Matter comes out and even Matter's okay, and it produces a quarter of that revenue, and then another game, or even half that revenue, and then another Bungie game comes out in 2025, 26 and produces half of that, you're talking about Bungie bringing in, $450 million a year.
Yeah, and then also there's always a chance, not that Sony would take it away from Bungie, but if Bungie's like, hey, we really want to focus on Matter, can you just drop this game off on one of your other Destiny off just to keep it running. They could definitely do something like that. I don't think that would ever happen because Bungie's very prideful of their work.
But they can give them a studio to support them, like Vicarious Visions did during the Activision partnership. Whether that's even a third party outside studio,
which
that they just
Nixxy's could be that thing for them because they're a PC studio, so that could be like the domino falling for Sony.
Or like we've always talked about, of like, you know, in the next 2 years, Bungie might be, they're currently like under 1,000 employees. They might have 2,500 employees or 3,000 employees, you know, like to where, I don't know if it's going to jump that much, but to where that they could just add more people that they need to do stuff, you know, because of Sony's, you know, payroll.
Yeah. So. Other bits from this, Sony basically they set an allowance of roughly $17-18 billion for acquisitions. After the Bungie deal, they have about $10 billion left, so they spent around $7 or $8 billion on acquisitions and investments. Some people were speculating, well, where's the other half of the $7 or $8 billion they spent? And that is in
Housemarque, Bluepoint.
Yeah, Firesprite, Fabric, Nixxy's, Discord, Epic Games, because they gave $500 million to
the
Epic
Haven
Games.
Deal, whatever they're doing with
Haven deal. But it does mean that they still have $10 billion left that I would assume they want to spend before the end of the year, because you put that money aside with intention to spend it. So more acquisitions.
And you get heavily taxed for having savings.
Yeah, you get taxed heavily for having savings, and then next year when you make the budget, they're going to be like, well, you only need $10 billion. You want to always spend what you're allocated for that. So Sony isn't done. There will be more deals to come, as Jim Ryan has said, as Jeff Keighley has said, as Jason Schreier has said.
I want to put something to bed that I think that has been I've seen on the internet a lot last week, kind of since this came out. $10 billion won't buy you Capcom.
No, we'll get into it in the next story, which is why I included the next story.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. This is what happens when I don't read the whole document. I saw some numbers for Capcom, like sales numbers for Capcom's franchises. They're ridiculous.
Well, so it sounds like, from everything that I've read and listened to, it sounds like Monster Hunter is basically, Capcom was looking to get out of, being Capcom until the Monster Hunter games sold so well that they're just like, let's keep going, and then a Resident Evil games did extremely well. So Capcom is not going anywhere. But yeah, we're probably expect more developers to be purchased. I don't think they have the budget for a whole ass publisher. But there's definitely going to be stuff out there, because no one was thinking Bungie was going to be acquired, and then they were acquired. Yeah. So there's probably other studios.
I definitely think that the next thing I think we're going to hear, and I don't know if it's going to be Sony or if it's going to be Microsoft, but there's going to be something peeled off from Warner Brothers. Like, I really feel like that'll be the next, like, wow thing. Like, we might hear about some other studio or some other small thing. I just think that Time Warner's going to peel something off. I don't know what it's going to be, like NetherRealm or something.
I would lean NetherRealm just because does Discovery want to be in a Mortal Kombat business?
Right.
And Discovery might not have the DC license, so they're not going to be in the Injustice business either. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone peels NetherRealm away. I know people are expecting Microsoft to go after Japanese studios, but that's not how it works in Japan. Yeah. They would rather deal with Sony than to deal with Microsoft. So there are, I still think there's a chance someone can. I think you can get a From Software for the Bungie amount.
Agreed. But I don't, and it partially, full disclosure from my standpoint is I don't play From Software games, so I don't hold, like, From Software is not always in the front of my mind. Like, they're there right now because of Elden Ring. They could possibly ride the success of Elden Ring into raising the price of their purchase.
Elden Ring, yes.
But I just feel like it's going to be somebody from Warner, or it's going to be Iron Galaxy. Like, that would be the next thing I would see, would be Iron Galaxy, because of their ability of whatever they've got going on with this new game as a games as a service, so they're valuable, and the ability for them to do stuff. Like, I think
they did everything. I think they just did Uncharted.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I looked something up, and they did they did the upscaling, and they do stuff in the background. You're like, you look something up, you're like, they did that too.
Yeah, and they have Adam Boyes as, like, one of their, like, I think he's like the CFO or CEO.
Right. So I mean, like, I could just totally see Iron Galaxy, and like, it would be It'd be it'd be cool to see Sony buy them, like because of Anna Boyce's relationship. It'd be hilarious to see Xbox buy them.
Yeah, because that's definitely one of the studios, Iron Galaxy, that would make perfect sense for Sony right now in terms of like, well, you're gonna need someone that's gonna have to help Bungie, and you're gonna want a company that can kind of just go wherever they need to go. So Iron Galaxy would probably be like the next US studio that probably has eyeballs already. People are probably already kicking the tires on.
Yeah.
But I think any Japanese studios, I'm going to assume that they're only going to sell to Sony or Nintendo. They're not going to sell to Microsoft because that's just not how acquisitions work in Japan. Like, they're not going to sell to Microsoft, no matter how much Microsoft puts on the table. They would just rather keep it in-house. But let's move on to the next story, which deals with Capcom. The country of Saudi Arabia has acquired 5% of Capcom and Nexxon. So this is it's like a wealth sovereignty fund in Saudi Arabia. It's basically their way of trying to diversify their portfolio because it's right now like 100% oil, and they're trying to invest in different games companies because they see that as the future or whatever. So they already spent like $3 billion investing in Activision, Blizzard, Take-Two, and EA. So they're about to be paid really well when Microsoft closes the deal. But so they spent roughly $1.2 billion in investments of Capcom and Nexxon, and it roughly equates to 5% stakes in each country. These numbers are really kind of rough currently, but it shows you that if they spent $1 billion, we don't know how it's been divvied up between the two companies, but it was only able to equate 5% stakes in Capcom and in Nexxon. It shows you that with the $10 billion that Sony has available, they're probably not going to be able to afford Capcom if whatever money was spent by Saudi Arabia only got them 5% of.
And I don't think they're going to be able to
Capcom.
buy a Japanese company. Like they're not going to be able to buy Sega for $10 billion. Like, so,
no.
I mean, I don't think I think Square is worth more than 10.
Square is probably halfway between Bethesda and Activision.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I don't know where this stuff's gonna come from. Like, you know, like in terms of the even the European and the Eastern studios.
Yeah, I think they can probably spend some of that $10 billion to peel off some IPs from Konami. That would probably make sense, but you're not gonna pull off a whole publisher, especially now that this Capcom news came out. That 5% is worth anywhere from $500 million to $1 billion. Means that those numbers just don't add up at all.
Yeah,
for that to happen. All right, so that was just a quick one. It's always weird every time Saudi Arabia buys a stake in a video game industry, but there's also states that actually own, like in the U.S.
As soon as you said like Saudi Arabia, I was like immediately thinking about Kingdoms of Amalur.
Yeah. Well, no, I there are like some other states that like own part of Take-Two and Activision Blizzard, because this isn't unheard of a country or a state.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of one of those things like, hey, bring your headquarters to our state and we'll give you a tax break, but we get like 3% of the company, you know, or something like that. Like as a very broad example.
Yeah. Let's get into Grand Theft Auto news. Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S is coming out March 25th. Grand Theft Auto was then casually and formally, or Grand Theft Auto 6 was casually and formally announced as in development via a tweet on Rockstar and then a blog post that was advertising GTA 5. So very nonchalant way, almost to Rockstar, a way of saying like,
well, yeah,
GTA
of course.
6. Yeah. It's one of those
stupid.
Yeah. They did this right before the financial call to investors, so it was probably not an announcement for us video gamers, but an announcement for the investors to be like, "What's going on? Oh, you're doing a sequel to Grand Theft Auto 5? Cool." I'm
gonna buy more shares.
For pretty much exactly. So they said the game is well in development. Some information that was kind of crazy. GTA 5 has sold 155 million units across all platforms, which is
which is going to get close to 200 million probably with the third platform being added. The third the third generation of platforms being added.
I did look into this a little bit, and apparently a lot of purchases, or not a lot, but there's a fair amount of purchases that have been made that I guess every time you had bought the next gen version or just the $20 version of the game, you got shark currency. Okay. So there were definitely a lot of players that bought multiple copies to get those bonuses. Don't know how much that equates to the 155 million, but it probably did help a little bit because of people into that.
10%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's crazy. You know?
Yeah. And then the GTA Definitive Trilogy or whatever it was called has sold over 10 million.
That number, and then the number that you do have in another story coming up next, is what is wrong with the video game industry. People are like, this is stupid. This game is broken. Okay, here, I'm going to buy it anyways. Like, yeah, this is me when I worked for Foot Locker, and the prices of fitted hats kept going up from like $24 to $28 to $32, and people would complain about it as they're inserting their credit card or giving me the cash. And the same thing with like Air Force One shoes and Jordan shoes going up $10, $20. Oh, the next Jordan costs $200. That's stupid. And then his friend's like, man, I'm not going to get them. He's like, no, I'm still getting them. It's just dumb.
Well, it's basically, and imagine how many more copies it's going to sell once they fix it completely. Yeah, and they're like, hey, it's not broken as much anymore. But yeah, GTA Definitive Trilogy, whatever, has sold over 10 million. They had to basically do a little rough math to get this number because they said
it's like 6 months, right?
Yeah. I think it was November or no, December.
Yeah,
it was December
so 3 months
6th or whatever.
Not even 3 months. Like, come on.
Yeah, so it's funny, like, because they sold. They said they sold 15 million copies of Grand Theft Auto last quarter. 5 million were from GTA 5, and then and the other 10 was from the trilogy.
This doesn't include the little bit of money they had for the Game Pass crap going on too. Like,
no, not at all. Yeah, the Game Pass and PlayStation Now. They had. Remember that was divided up, and then also
and then Red Dead was on there too.
Yeah. So, holy shit. GTA 5 still sells like crazy, and people don't know how to say no to something broken. All right. Continuing the Q3
Consumers
reporting.
Are stupid.
Fucking the worst. The fucking worst. All right, let's go to some smarter consumers. Let's talk about the Nintendo Switch.
Well, yes and no.
They at least buy stuff. So Nintendo announced that the Switch console family has sold over 103 million units. Of course, that they didn't differentiate which Switch sold more or whatever over the last couple months, but they did do some software sales. So Diamond and Pearl sold 13.9 million copies last year. Mario Party. I mean, that makes sense. It's Pokemon.
I know. It's just like, that's not even been out that long either. November, right?
September. Because there's only 6 months apart between Pokemon games. Because one just came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So Diamond and Pearl sold 13.9 million. Mario Party Superstars 5.4 million. Skyward Sword HD sold 3.8 million, and Metroid Dread. So 2.7 million copies. I'm assuming you're referring to Metroid Dread as being a disappointment.
Yeah, and the fact that people bitched and moaned about a Skyward Sword remake, but 4 million of y'all bought it, myself included. Yeah. I didn't complain about it, though.
I almost thought that number was low, but then I told myself, like, well, people weren't happy, and also it's Skyward Sword.
But say that's considered to be arguably, like, critically the worst Zelda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, and then, Nintendo can go, like, Nintendo can go, aha, you didn't want Metroid, but you wanted a 10-year-old Zelda game.
I would imagine Nintendo is happy with the 2.7 million for Metroid Dread based on, like, the size and scale of Metroid Dread.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish it did a little bit better because when you compare it to
more Metroid.
Exactly.
I haven't played this one. It's sitting there in my Michael pile of shame in the shrink wrap still. I will play it. It's on my 2022 list of 12 games to beat. It's just like the 2.7 is a little disappointing. Just for when Mario Party sells 5.4.
Yeah. Now, granted, and this is as of the end of last year, so it's probably at 3.
Yeah, granted, it is the newest of the games on this list.
Yeah,
being that it came out in October, so I mean it's all relative, but it's still kind of one of those things that it also had the most front and center time on shelves for holiday shopping. Well, that people weren't going into stores to do.
Yeah, but I'm sure like when you put Dread next to the remastered Pokemon game selling almost 14 million, and then the remastered Mario Party selling 5.4 million, and then a remastered Skyward Sword selling 3.8 million. I'm sure Nintendo's like, why do we put... This is why we don't do Metroid Dread every year, or every other year, because it doesn't sell as well as our Pokemon, Mario, and Zelda games. So hopefully they're happy with that. I hope they at least continue on this scale for Metroid games. Though I know there's a Metroid Prime that they announced like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. No, there's like the true like first person shooter Metroid Prime. Yeah. Or that's supposed to be supposedly still like Prime 4.
Is it? Yeah, it's 3 or 4.
So.
But
and I'm hoping to see whatever these. And I'm surprised we haven't seen this yet either. Maybe we do get a Nintendo Direct this week. By the time you're listening to this, it might have already happened. But so we'll see how good I am or not am. But I hope that we see something about Metroid 4 based on the heels of Metroid Dread. And then I just want the trilogy on the Switch. Yeah,
at this point, especially people want remasters.
Yeah, building the hype for 4, you need to put the other ones on the Switch.
And there's also been rumors that that's done. It's been done for like a year or two, but they've just been sitting on it because they just want to wait. There's a possibility, especially the Nintendo Direct is supposed to be stuff coming out in the first half of this year, so there's still a chance that they can.
Well, and I also hope we get to see some. It's 4. Why it says it's 4. Metroid Prime 4. I also hope that we get to see some the show gameplay, but I don't know if Nintendo has that control.
I would hope they would do it just because they know people are excited for it. It's just
again to your point, the Otani aspect and that the Japanese market, like
it's a slam dunk. You should
showing
have it
in the Japanese market. Yeah.
Did you see the Otani like collector's edition that has like it's a steel book with like manga art?
I saw the cover and I guess I did. I guess that's the steelbook, and they kept talking about the collector's edition. I kept waiting to see like what else came with it.
Yeah, kind of tempted by that, even though I probably won't play it.
It's cool looking though. Like the case is cool looking. But usually like they came with like a hat. I was really kind of curious, like when they had that Griffey collection, and you know they've always done some pretty cool like tangible items, and I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. And then lifetime sales updates for the Switch. Mario Kart 8 has sold 43.35 million. Animal Crossing's at 37.62 million, and Super Smash Brothers is at 27.4 million sold. There was
so Mario, like I love attach rate. Okay, you guys know I love attach rate. So Mario Kart 8 at 43.5 is 40. So if you take 10 people that own a Switch, 4 of them are raising their hand that they own Mario Kart. That's crazy. And then 3 of them are raising their hand that they own Horizon or Animal Crossing. I'm sorry. And then the other 2 are saying they own Smash. So like there's 10 Switch owners, and you could list 3 games, and all 10 of them would probably raise their hand.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, the attach rate is crazy. And then this fact that Pokemon's at 13.9 million, and it only came out within 6 months, which means it's going to pass. It's either going to get really close to Smash Brothers, or it's going to pass Smash Brothers by like.
Well, and the only thing that'll slow it down is everybody knows there's another Pokemon coming.
Well, it's already out. It's out as of last week. So
so there's always another Pokemon coming. Like Smash, people are like I think that now that people know that, you know, Smash is done, like I think you're going to see another spike in that again. If somebody didn't own it because they're like, oh, I'll just play the next one. Like, dude, they're not doing any more Smash. Okay, fine, I'll go buy this one.
Yeah, you know, we'll probably see Smash on sale more. Like Splatoon is always on sale.
Yep. So just crazy numbers.
Yeah. Stuff I didn't put in this because financial stuff came out. PlayStation announced that they've sold like 17.5 million PS5s. It's underperforming compared to the PS4, but it's strictly because of the shortages right now.
Right.
Because they can't keep them in stock. Nintendo, I think they said they sold like 23 million Switches, down from their predicted 24 million. And then Microsoft, because they don't like to give numbers, people had to do the backwards math. So it was revealed that the Xbox Series S and X consoles are outperforming the Xbox One and the 360s in the same time frame. Someone did the math, and
was it like 12 million?
13. 13, so like it was 12.5 for the 360. So if it's outperforming that, we're probably looking at like 13-ish million Xboxes out there, with the Series S being a majority of those units. So
that's like a 1.5 to 1 ratio, which I think Microsoft is okay with.
Especially compared to last gen, where it was like 4 to 1.
Compared to last gen and compared to the direction that they're going with their service, of where they're like, you can play this stuff on PC. You can just play it on your Chromebook, like. Yeah,
so I'm assuming they're happy with where they're at right now. Though we'll see, their financial stuff will probably come out soon enough that we might actually get a real number on how many are out there, as opposed to
we'll get a real number on Game Pass subscribers. We won't get a real console number.
Yeah. I would assume though, like someone's gonna have to. That has to get reported somewhere when the fiscal year is over. So it's just a matter of people doing their due diligence and going through like the 100 slides when they release that stuff to their investors. But that is it for the news.
All right. So, unfortunately, we have something else that got delayed, but I just hope this clears the way for Gotham Knights, because Suicide Squad has been pushed to 2023. When I think if we go back and like listen to a show when we talked about this being announced, I said there's no way this is coming in 2022. Anyways, so especially if it's their games as a service. So like that's definitely interesting. So now that they've came out and reportedly rumored that it's being pushed to 2023, people are hoping that we see a little bit more on Gotham Knights and Hogwarts.
Yeah, Hogwarts, the rumor or the date that was leaked is like sometime in September, which then also hopes that Warner Brothers wouldn't put Hogwarts and Gotham Knights in the same time frame, just because I know,
May would be great.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. May, June. If they shadow drop it during the DC fandom, just know that they just want that game to die.
Well, is it like I'm gonna say the Batman movie's coming too, so there's a really good opportunity to like do some marketing, but I don't mean, we'll see. Just get the game out, please, and let it be good. Let it be fun. I don't,
And it's a co-op game. Just let it be out. We'll make our own fun if it's not good. It's fine. Co-op games get that pass.
All right. So now we'll go on to what we're playing and watching. I'll go first because I know Michael has a review. So, I played more Horizon Zero Dawn. I completed the main storyline of Horizon Zero Dawn. And I really, really enjoyed the story. And I am very interested in Forbidden West now, just to see how it continues. I am still currently playing the Frozen Wilds. I've started it. That's a very weird way to treat an expansion.
Well, because it's
just
sends you
part
right
of the
before
map.
Yeah.
So you beat the game, and it goes, and then it goes. You've unlocked New Game Plus, and now we've put you back into the point before the very last mission, which is cool because you can go do more side missions and have other people affect kind of how the story is at the end. So if you feel like you missed something, you can go back for more side missions. And then Frozen Wilds is just like an expansion on the map where you climb over a hill and you're there. And so far that's been fun. It's a smaller area and to see. So again, I was playing on story mode, so my save file was about roughly a little bit under 20 hours. I never really struggled with anything, which was on purpose. However, as much as I enjoyed the story, I was not a fan of how this was delivered. I do understand that it's a 5-year-old game, but delivering it through the holograms cutscenes that they were trying to deliver that weren't really cutscenes, they were just things like essentially like enhanced audio logs, I was not as big of a fan of. And I also felt that the world was just unnecessarily large.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of open fields and stuff, so they really I hope they do, like, the traversal does look improved in Forbidden West, so hopefully they learned a little bit from that. But it definitely did seem like the world was a little too big for the story.
And I know, like, it's supposed to be, it's a apocalyptic world, like, the story that they were telling was cool, but I just found myself, like, trying to get from point A to point B as fast as I could because I wanted to see what the next story beat was.
Yeah.
And again, I know that they've obviously learned from stuff over the last couple of years. Sony's PlayStation Studios has learned, from over the years. But having significantly put time in with this now and put in time with Breath of the Wild is a better open world, and they're both their open worlds are very bland. But in terms of like, I would just go I would be running for like 9 or 10 minutes to get to the next point. Like,
yeah, and you're in story mode too, so it's not like you were being challenged combat wise. So you definitely probably
right,
felt
but that would have
a
just
little bit more.
annoyed me even more though, because like it would have just got in my way on my way where I was going.
Potentially, but I think sometimes they like the world feeling a little more dangerous probably would have made it more entertaining going from point to point.
But I don't think there was less monsters or less machines.
No, but they were easier to kill when you came across.
But I was still just going by them anyway. Like,
yeah.
So, and I understand I was playing a different playstyle, and in my mind, I thought the game was maybe a little bit bigger, like in terms of story and scope. So like there's a part of me that was rushing, but then like I even put these thoughts on there when I got to that to the point again where I had stopped previously like a year ago. I was so close to a significant story moment in the game that if I like it's my own fault, but if I would have got there, I would have been like, all right, I want to go, and I didn't get there. And that was me playing on like normal mode or whatever, and it took too long to get there.
It's almost like the opposite of when you put a game down and you come back to it and you're like, oh, I was by the last level. Shit. Yeah. Why did I take so long to do it?
Yeah, because like when that moment happened, like, and the main reason I know that I was doing something different is because I earned a trophy, and then I was obviously seeing stuff that I hadn't seen before. I was like, oh, this is what's going on. This is cool. Like I want to know what the next thing that's going on is, and it had some cool moments, like and it's great, and like hearing in the dialogue of talking to people with the choose your own dialogue, hearing stuff like talked about with Forbidden West, like if you're playing it 5 years ago, you'd be like, all right, whatever. But now, like me knowing that Horizon 2 is called Horizon Forbidden West and hearing that in the game, I'm like, huh, that's even more interesting. So. But yeah, needless, I'm really enjoying it. I've dabbled, kind of doing a little bit of Destiny prep, helping some people. There's a couple new players that are kind of getting back in now, getting ready for Witch Queen. So I've been kind of dabbling with that just a little bit. Started watching because it showed up on like Owen was actually talking about it, and I'm probably gonna get the name wrong, but it's on Netflix. Raising Dion. It's like there's 2 seasons of it. It's like about this kid that has like some superpowers to it. Michael B. Jordan plays the dad actor that apparently has passed away. But it's for it to be kind of like at first marketed to Owen a little bit. It's a very, very slow in terms of like it's not kid friendly. But the thing that really drew my attention is the title for episode 2 was Fortress of Solitude, and I was like, that's a Superman reference. And then I was like, in my mind, like there's been all those rumors about Michael B. Jordan playing Superman. But based on what I've seen so far in the first 2 episodes that I watched today, it's not Superman. So yeah, so I don't really know what's going on in it. It's on Netflix. It seems super interesting. I don't think it's for a 6 or 7 year old, but I definitely think it'd be kind of cool for like a young teenager or the first 2 hours. Like I was kind of. Every time the episode ended, I was like, huh, they didn't answer any questions. Let's watch the next one and see. Oh, they answered part of one. Let's watch the next one and see. Like, I can see exactly what they're doing. Eventually, it's got like, get to the point. So like, yeah, I was really enjoying that. And I watched something else, but I can't remember. She'll probably tell me in chat. So, because I didn't write it down when she told me today. So.
Dave, you got to do your homework every time.
I didn't do homework in high school. So.
True. Same.
Yeah, that's it. So.
All right. So for me, all of last week, I was just focused on Sifu, which is the new game from Slow Clap. Slow Clap. Yeah, sorry. So Sifu is the latest from Slow Clap and Devolver Digital. It's a kung fu action game where the main gimmick is every time you die in the game, you age. So 1 death equals 1 year added to your life, and you basically just you sit back up and you continue fighting. This means you can start off as like a 20-year-old, and by the end of the game, you could be in your 70s, or by the end of a level, you could be in your 70s. So it's very focused on like the time mechanic gimmick sort of thing. The game feels like it learned a lot from their previous game, Absolver. It's a hand-to-hand combat game. Kung Fu is like the main combat in this, but it's all about timing and precision. You move from like space to space on each level, and there are different enemy types and variants, so you want to take your time, and it can feel super, super difficult when you're first starting and you will get your ass kicked, and the age mechanic can be a hell of a burden because however many times you die in a row, it basically stacks the age. So you die 3 times in a row, it just keeps adding. So first time you die, 1 year. Second time you die, they add 2 years onto the 1 year, and so on and so forth. So you can hit a point where a death can be like 7 or 8 years, and then you're an old man and you're done. You know, like it seems like once you get past 70, you get like one time you can get revived up. The oldest I've gotten in this game is like 78. Once you hit that, you're done. Like you
flatline. Can't be resuscitated.
Yeah, you just don't have enough health. You're moving a little bit slower. It can get very brutal. The game's like broken down into different areas. The enemies and their placements don't change. So it very much kind of comes down to recognizing patterns and placements of enemies, because it's putting you in constant situations where it just turns into a badass action movie every damn room you go into, and you get into a flow, and that's very important for a game like this that is about timing and precision and being strategic on what you want to do when you're in certain situations. So early on, there's going to be a lot of frustration because the game's going to feel very brutal because you literally see your character aging until they die. But it just kind of becomes a repetition point where you just want to get as good as you can in each scenario to shave time off of your runs. Each area that you go into, once you finish that level, that area, it basically locks your age in for the next area. So in the first section, the first time I played it, I started at 20 years old, and then I got out of that area at 25. So the next time I would start the next area, I was always 25. You can go back and replay areas to do better, and that's a good thing to do because you can unlock permanent moves that carry over from area to area. And so even if you fail, you go back to that area, you'll still have the permanent move. And then there are other upgrades you can do through playing the game and repetition and hitting certain points. And each time you play an area, you'll uncover more secrets, you'll get new shortcuts. The areas are all connected, so in the third level, you get a key that opens a door in the first level, and that can potentially shave a ton of time off, and you can avoid a ton of enemies and just go directly to
the biggest thing is you're avoiding combat and you're avoiding possible mistakes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely feels like a brutal grind early on, but once you go through the game once and go to each area at least one time, you'll unlock enough shortcuts that you're like, oh, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go directly to the boss. I have enough upgrades that I could just go directly to the boss, kick their ass, shave 10, 15 years off my life, and then now I can play the game in the other areas and hit that final boss at a reasonable age.
Not feel like a struggle bus, yeah.
Yeah. And it just kind of comes down to, because a lot of people are talking about how difficult the game is, they want you to replay areas over and over again. They want you to fail and improve at the game. And we have a question about this later, about like why games like this kind of exist, and it's just to get people to just stick with the game and replay the different areas as much as possible. The only thing that I think this game kind of falters on is the story starts off really interesting, and it gets thinner as you continue the game. Like the overarching story, there's pretty cool background stuff with each boss that you unlock over time. But once I finally got to the end of the game, I was like, okay, I feel like a badass. But then the game's just kind of over. And then it's just like you can replay the different areas again. So I feel like this story just kind of lets it down just a little.
Does anything change or is affected by the story if you're at like the final boss and you're like 28 versus like 48, 58?
Not too much. They do make some comments, like as you get older, like the comments that they say to you can be slightly different, but I can't tell if that's
there's not different endings for like each 10-year age group or something.
As far as I can tell, no. There's different trophies based on finishing at different ages. Okay. But I finished the game and I've basically started to replay areas just because each area basically has like a detective board where you basically put all the secrets that you find on a detective board. So I'm kind of replaying areas to fill out those detective boards. Cool. So that's like another mechanic to replay it. But the game has so much damn style. The soundtrack is so damn good that in the first area, it's kind of okay. But the combat's really good, very stylish. But when you get into the second area and it's like a nightclub and they're playing some club music, they're playing around with the lighting. By the time I got to the second area, I'm like, okay, this is my jam. This is my type of game, even if it's difficult and I don't have the most patience because you have to parry, you have to block, and I'm terrible at that. But by the time I got to the end of the game, I was pretty damn good and was excited to replay the different areas, even if I'm not getting much story out of it because of where the game kind of falters.
It definitely seemed like a little bit that I've seen from, you know, like some of the videos that you posted. Like you've got a pretty cool TikTok posted with it. That it's definitely not a game that I think you could like pick up and play like once a week. Like it's definitely a game that you have to kind of be in rhythm with.
Yes, very much so. It was one of those games that you can't really take a break from it because you'll be out the flow. But then it's also really hard to put the controller down once you do find a rhythm, because there was definitely a couple sessions where it's like really late, but then something clicked and I got into a really good flow to where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop when I'm an old man and dead. Like I can't let this run go away, especially as you unlock the different like move sets that you get. There's a couple moves that are just simple, like catching an object thrown at you and then throwing it back, or being able to kick an object that's on the ground at your enemy. As soon as I put the XP in to unlock those, I was like, holy shit, I'm going back to the first level, because there's a couple instances where this would be
passed
really
like
handy.
12 flower pots, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that happens, and I think that's really rewarding way of just
it's
getting
definitely like
you to replay
a different spin on a Metroidvania style.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's a cool spin on that. But there are some instances where, I check out other people that are reviewing the games and just seeing their like frustration with some of the bosses, and then realizing that there's some moves that you could have put XP in and unlocked that would have made some bosses easier. That I was, the third boss in particular throws objects at you. If you don't unlock the ability to catch an object and throw it back, that boss is fucking annoying. And the only reason I unlocked that ability is in the first level, someone threw a bottle at me and it disrupted my flow, and I'm like, fuck that, I'm unlocking this ability.
You ain't doing that to me again no more.
Yeah. But that instance might not have happened to someone else, so they might not have thought there was any reason for them to unlock that. So then by the time they get to the third boss, they're getting their ass kicked. So long story short, unlock that ability immediately if you're going to pick this game up, because it'll make your life so much easier.
Be a thrower, not a hugger.
Yeah, but there's so many like clever things that this game does in terms of like each level has a different boss and completely different mechanics with how to deal with that boss, or the boss has different abilities or like weapons that you need to adapt to, and then just different ways around that. It's just really interesting. It's been a while since we graded a game, but I'm confident to say this is like a 4 out of 5 for me. The story is the only thing, though. Like, I wish there was just a little bit more, because the intro is so fucking good. Like, the prologue, it shows a really promising story, and the ending feels triumphant, but only from a combat perspective. Because then once they like talk about the story,
we've always talked about that. Like, good gameplay can cover up, not so good story. Great story covers up not so good gameplay. Like, and then there's always the balance in between. And when you get that balance in between of like, hey, I'm really interested in the story and I love the mechanics, got the foundation for a really, really good game.
Yeah. And like I beat the final boss, and there was like a hell yeah, I was high, like hell yeah, I beat this game, and then it just ends, and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't like completely satisfied because the ending, but I got that high from beating the final boss, because the boss battles are so challenging. So that's highly recommend this. I think it's a $40 game. I think that's pretty fair pricing.
$10 a level is cool, right? No, I don't know. I'm just joking.
Yeah. I mean, there's technically 5 levels, but yeah, there's a lot of replayability. Get one free. Yeah. It is funny though. I have saw some people putting up their speed runs of the game, and people very confused at being like, oh, you can beat the game in 40 minutes. But then when I looked at the speed run, I'm like, well, he unlocked the shortcuts. So they actually played this game several times
right
to unlock the keys to open the door.
You played it for 10 hours to beat it in a half an hour. Good job.
Yeah. So it definitely, like, if you see people speed running the game, know that they have had to play this game several times to unlock literal keys to doors.
For the record, is typically how almost every speedrunner works. They get a really good understanding of every instance and every mechanic of the game, and then they destroy it. So,
I was seeing instances of that where people were like, "Oh my god, this game's so short." It's like, no, they had to put so much time into making this game short.
Technically, Deathloop's a 45-minute game, right? If you know everything.
Yeah, perfect world, you just happen to fall into place. Yeah, everything comes down perfectly. But yeah, that is basically all the time my gameplay this week went into. I'll have another game to talk about next week on the Switch, but I don't think I can talk about that right now, but I haven't really played too much of it. But
better safe than sorry.
yeah. That's it for me, and I haven't really been watching anything, just the Nana Blu-rays that I was talking about last week or 2 weeks ago.
Awesome. All right. So we got a couple questions. You can send us questions and comments using hashtag AskDigitalDays. You can send them to us on Twitter. You can send them to us in Discord or in Facebook. Or you can just post them in Facebook, or you can comment when Michael or myself puts the post up. So Chadwick writes, I'm curious what you all think of the single-player experiences like Sifu, Deathloop, Returnal. Is this the model that reawakens single-player games, or is it a fad? So I think it's just another genre. I don't think there's anything currently wrong with the single-player genre. Just to not only speak about like Sony Studios, like Nobody Saves the World was a single player game that I thoroughly enjoyed. Horizon Zero Dawn is a single player game that I thoroughly enjoyed. Returnal did not click with me. Deathloop did not click with me in the first half hour, 45 minutes, but I do have intentions of going back. And I probably won't play Sifu because I think I might throw my controller at my TV. So.
Yeah. I mean, specifically with these games, it's a time loop mechanic. The time loop stuff definitely seems, though Sifu doesn't have the full time loop mechanic that these games do, Deathloop and Returnal. I think it's both a fad and just like what you said, a genre. Like it's a fad in terms of like there's so many time loop games, but it's also a good way to keep people from like dropping your game or reselling your game by giving you that like constant loop and the replayability of being like, well, see what happens if you do it this way, or adding different scenarios and branching paths. So it definitely feels like it's just a subgenre.
But I also feel like the majority of the player base, if they get through Sifu, like if let's say they've been playing it, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tries or whatever, and they get through, they'll be like, cool, I beat the game, I'm good, and they'll move on. They won't be like, oh, I can do that better, or like Deathloop, like, oh, that was a really fluppered, like a really effed up, run, and I missed a bunch of shots, and I did all this stuff, but I got credits. Like I rolled credits on the game, I'm done. Like that's the majority of your player base. Same thing with Returnal. Like they're not thinking about going back and redoing a dome to get a better weapon.
But
like,
I think
would it make their experience a little bit better? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think as a developer, you're hoping to at least peel off some of that. You're just hoping to retain some of those players, bring them back in again. Though we're not really in the PS3 360 era where like EA's doing the Project $10 bullshit, like they're not trying to keep you from trading in games as most people are downloading them anyways. But it's definitely something to like keep you playing. It's just a genre that also really helps to keep you in there. But to your point, once people see credits, most people are just going to stop there. But trophies was a way to keep people playing. And now we just have a bunch of time mechanic games. But I think it's partly because there's so much success in the time mechanic genre right now that people are just
I think
really
it's like everybody was trying to do some type of looter for a little while. Everybody was trying to do a battle royale for a little while. And time loop's just a flavor of the season. Like I wouldn't even call it a fad because I think that people can do it like really well. Like it sounds like Deathloop did it really well. It sounds like Sifu's handled it very well, especially for an independent developer. There's definitely challenges there. I think that this mantra of like making a game hard just to be hard it has to be dealt with delicate hands. And all three of those, I mean, with two of those three games, I would borderline say are hard challenging. Resogun and Sifu, just based on what people have been telling. Or not Resogun.
Returnal.
Returnal. Sorry.
Yeah, Returnal's pretty brutal. Deathloop.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, yeah. In order, I would probably say. I mean, I didn't play Sifu, but I would say Returnal is probably harder than Sifu, and Sifu is harder than Deathloop. Obviously. Yeah. So, all right. So next question, Matt Lowe sends in. Let Dave spill his thoughts on the Destiny 2 Witch Queen video documentary this week. What is he looking forward to the most? So today, Destiny released what they call a Vidoc, which was a 15-minute video of an in-depth Witch Queen stuff. The biggest thing that I'm actually most interested in, confused by, and intrigued by all at the same time is this. We're getting a weapon crafting table in Destiny where you're gonna make your own weapons. So what a lot of people have a problem with in Destiny is the RNG. Like, I just did this for an hour and I just got this cool gun, but it's a shit roll. I don't want to play this game anymore. Well, they're starting to build crafting to where you can start to extract perks from other weapons and put them on these weapons. They're being very, very vague about it, and the one detailed update that they wrote about it, I read it 3 times, and all 3 times I went away with my head hurting more than it did the first time. This is, this has got Division 2 perk extraction stuff written all over it, feelings and similarities, and they're adding origin traits to the guns, and it's just it looks like if you invest time in the weapons, you'll be able to level them up. As you level them up, you'll be able to have more perks on them, and as you can have more perks on them, you'll have less what I call less loot bloat. Like, you won't, if the gun drops again, you're like, I don't care, I've already got this fully leveled up, so I can just dismantle this for parts for leveling up another weapon. So that's the part that, like I said, I'm intrigued and confused by at the same time. And a couple of the content creators that I follow and I know got to do a virtual thing with Bungie for Witch Queen, and the campaign, they seem to be really focused on the campaign, of using words like our one of our most adventurous and advantageous campaigns that we've ever done in Destiny. And it looks like the campaign will be replayable, which is something that hasn't been very common. It was in Destiny 1, not as much in Destiny 2 now. And there's different difficulty levels on the campaign. So I definitely see them wanting the player base to interact with the campaign a little bit more versus just blitz through it, get it done, get to the end. So it looks super interesting. So I do have a little bit of time off requested for Witch Queen's release, so I'll probably stream and whatever. So and then we are trying to with the group trying to get a day one raid, just to I don't even know if we'll complete the raid just because of the 24-hour modifier they put on the game, but there's if you're thinking about playing Destiny or checking it out, or if you're going to pick up Witch Queen, feel free to join the clan. It's a separate Discord, so anybody that's worried about that doesn't play Destiny is worried about Destiny taking over the DDG server. It's a completely separate server. Michael can attest to it because he's not in it.
Yeah. So there is a Destiny room in our Discord server
for voice chat. Yeah. So, but in terms of it's completely separate. If you want an invite to that, we can take care of that. If you are playing the game on a semi-regular basis, you're more than welcome to play. So, but yeah, it's definitely interesting. We're about 10 days away. So or 2 weeks actually, 2 weeks from today. Sorry. So there's definitely a lot of hype going on amongst the people that I pay attention to. So. All right, Stefan Wren writes, "What is your favorite DC character and your favorite Marvel character?" Want to
go? For me, so it took me a while, when I saw this question, to figure out a DC character because I just don't love DC that much. I would probably lean the Flash, just because I liked him in the comic books. I kind of like the TV show, though I didn't stick with it. So I'd probably go the Flash. It would have probably been the Green Lantern, but that movie left such a bad taste in my mouth that I just don't. I don't talk about Green Lantern anymore. So probably Flash for DC, and then Marvel. That one's a lot trickier, but I would probably say Cyclops because I'm an X-Men fan more than of anything in Marvel. I'm an X-Men fan first, so Cyclops and then Kitty Pryde Colossus would be mine. It'd basically just be a list of me just naming every X-Men character because that would be my favorite. Your
X-Men 97 show is coming out next year, man.
They got some of the original voice actors, which I'm happy about. But like, if that animation doesn't look like shit, I'm gonna be very annoyed. Like, if it's clean, I'm gonna be bothered.
I mean, if I had to choose right now, like DC wise, in terms of like enjoyment of a character, it would probably be Aquaman. Just because like I liked his character. And then Marvel wise, the most character that I'm like the most fascinated in right now is like Doctor Strange and Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most fascinated. I don't really know if I would have a favorite. Like,
so it's the opposite of me, where like DC is the one where it's hard for me to name, but Marvel, super easy.
Yeah. So I mean, and yeah, so I'm not really sure. There's like in general, like I just enjoy all the movies. I'm actually very curious. So the movie that I think I could just continuously watch and the character I could watch is Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'll be very curious how the storyline goes. So with Boseman's passing.
Yeah, that's the of the MCU. That's like the one movie I'm just like, I don't know how you get out of this, but I'm curious to see how they write this or not included or whatever. Yeah. That's probably like the most curious thing I have with the MCU, outside of just the actual storylines of just what's going on with Loki, what's going on with Wanda, what's going on with Doctor Strange. I'm curious about like what they plan to do with Black Panther as a franchise.
Yeah. All right, and our last question of the show, Roy Gibbs writes, question for MJC, what is going on with your Bulls? 5-5 in the last 10 games.
Oh, man. I mean, it's just, they just have so many injuries. Like, that's the problem. I think they're 1 for 12 against teams in the top 10 of the NBA, which is really bad, but I think there's only like 2 of those games where they actually had their full team healthy. So it's a really rough patch. I'm hoping they do a trade. Trades already started to happen before the deadline on Thursday, or Indiana made a bunch of moves that made no sense. And
they traded with Sacramento, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, but they basically got all the talent from Sacramento you would want on their team, and it's just like, how? And then Portland's doing their fire sale. So like, I'm hoping the Bulls either get healthy or make some moves to like hold down the fort until the playoffs start, because most of the players that are injured should be only injured for the next month. So hopefully things will get better. It's a real bad time right now. Bullspod.com. I got a Bulls podcast every 2 weeks. New episode out Friday or Saturday.
So maybe by the next time he records, they'll be winning.
Hopefully. Actually, no, it's like 2 days until we record, so not gonna happen.
And then Roy continues, in keeping with the sports theme, who do you each like in the Super Bowl? I'll be fascinated with this answer because Michael doesn't pay attention to football.
You know what? Cincinnati. I would say Cincinnati. I don't like San Francisco. And also, I just want to know if they would give an honorary.
Super Bowl.
Huh?
San Francisco's
no, it's Rams. The Rams beat them. Sorry, I don't give a shit about LA. LA doesn't give a shit about football from last time.
LA doesn't care about LA. So.
Yeah. So I would say Cincinnati. I just want to see if they'll give an honorary ring to Ocho Cinco, because sometimes they'll just give a ring to old players for no reason. So just give him a ring for no reason. I have no idea who the quarterback is for Cincinnati, to be fair.
Yeah, well, he's a 2-year player, Joe Burrow.
I know there's a Lions quarterback. Stafford is on the Rams. I just know that. Yeah.
So I mean, that's typically what most people think, because Matthew Stafford is on the Rams. He
broke your heart.
No, he did not. That man just decided to leave. He deserved to go somewhere that he could win. I just think the Joe Burrow story is better. Like, so the quarterback for the Bengals, and their story is better. This team 3 years ago won 2 games, and now they're in the Super Bowl, and it's mostly because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And when Joe Burrow is essentially undefeated in must-win games, going back to high school and college. So I'd be very curious to see. I think it would be really cool if Stafford won Super Bowl. I'd also think it is exactly what he was brought to Los Angeles to do. So if he doesn't do that, then it's not successful. As much as people in my local area think that I'm a Stafford hater for that, it's like when the Bulls got Dennis Rodman, it was to continue to win titles, not for Rodman to win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, the Rams are essentially a super team. I think that they said something about the projection that they have 5 or 6 Hall of Famers currently on the roster right now, so they should win the Super Bowl. But I think the Bengals story is cooler, and the Bengals story gives me hope as a Lions fan.
That they can draft good players that leave.
Yeah. And by the way, your boy Lovie Smith got a job again as the Houston coach.
Good for him. Good for him. Maybe he'll get Kyle Orton to be the quarterback coach or something. Who knows?
This is when Michael gave up on football, when Rex Grossman and the Bears were good, and then he's like, you know what, I'm done.
So when they got rid of Hester, I was just like, you know what, this is the one thing that we like, guys.
And then him bringing it back to video games. What is the last sports game that each of you played? I would get, if I had to guess right now, mine would be MLB The Show.
Mine was last year's NBA. That was like a weird game that like was my top played PlayStation game last year.
That was like your listening to podcast game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But also, I barely played the PlayStation last year, where my number one game was NBA, and it was like 36 hours.
Yeah.
And then everything else that I played, I finished in under like 20 hours on a PlayStation. So NBA, I guess the next one will be The Show, because I haven't had any urge to play the NBA game in quite some time.
My son plays a bunch of The Show, NBA. He does a bunch of like creative player and hockey. So like there's a bunch of those games that I've seen, and they always kind of intrigue me. But I've kind of lost that. I don't have like that buddy to play. Like sports games for me, the most fun I get out of them, whether if it's not a creative player, is usually that playing. Like I used to enjoy playing football against my brother or against my nephews or against friends, even online. And playing against the computer just gets boring.
Yeah, I mostly like the team management aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's where I end up getting enjoyment of just like, let me see if I can build a super team or something. But even then, I do one season in 2K and then that's it. I can't do multiple seasons against the computer without going crazy. And I can never keep up a league with friends just because you get enough people that drop out, just like with fantasy sports, where it's like, okay, half the people aren't doing this anymore.
Yeah, you almost have to get like 4 or 5 just to commit to like, we'll advance it once a week, please play. And then it's like involves texting and telling like, can you play tomorrow? No, I gotta work. Okay, can you play at 1 a.m. on Friday? It's like
too much of a headache.
Yep. All right, that's our show for this week. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Please consider reviewing if you can. I try not to mention that at the front of the show so I don't bore you guys, but reviews help. We are seeing some increased traffic. Obviously from the Activision and Bungie news, I think is a huge part of that people are wanting to hear some stuff. But hopefully if this is your first couple times listening, stick around, consider subscribing, tell a friend to tell a friend. That'd be helpful. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Digital Days Pod. You can follow Michael at the First MJC. You can follow myself at Good Dave Hunt. Facebook group, Discord server are all linked in the show notes. The Patreon is there as well. Bonus episode for January is out. And of like what we're looking forward to in 2022. So, and then as well, if you subscribe to that $7 tier, you get access to all of the other bonus episodes that we've released. I don't even know the number, but it's in the double digits or more. And you also get the podcast early for the $7 tier. The $5 tier gets you the podcast early, 1 day early, and then $3 and $1 Discord and tip jar. So, please consider checking that out. Teesprings, it's almost spring, allegedly. Supposedly it's February. Or if you want to get a hoodie or something like that, we've got a store there, so you can check out some stuff and let us know if there's anything else you want to see added there. And other than that, that's all I got. You got anything else, Michael?
Never do.
I feel rude just ending it without asking you.
Just end it, man. Be brave.
All right.
Be bold.
So I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick. See ya.